Thanks for joining us. We are sorry that we've been having some technical difficulties, but we are confident that we are going to be able to have a great show for you all tonight. So we just want to ensure that everyone is able to participate, and we are continuing to do what we can to ensure that that happens. But right now, go ahead and get ready and stay tuned for our shelter video. Teddy did an amazing job of showcasing what really happens at our shelter, and we are just so proud of the work that he has done. So take a look at our shelter video that's coming up right now, and we will make sure to share this all after the fact. So thank you, and we will can start our night.
Everyone to bed at 9:30. If anyone has like nighttime meds, we go ahead and take those. Then I basically do laundry, pick up a little bit of paperwork, try to organize, clean, a lot of bleaching. I set up the chore chart so everyone knows what to do in the morning. And then at 6 o'clock, I wake everybody up after I made breakfast, and everybody eats and does their chore and then starts their day. Good morning. How are you? Good. We're having oatmeal with cranberry orange muffins, okay? Good morning, sunshine. Noreen. All right, I made oatmeal and cranberry orange muffins. Yay! I know. Not really. All right, I'll see you down there, hon. You're welcome. First couple times I got him coffee, he's like, I need more sugar. So he always asks me now in the morning. He says, sugar? I say, yes. There's fruit and oatmeal. I said right there for you. Yeah. Did you want some coffee or some breakfast or anything? Both? Okay. Romero is one of our guests that stays outside. I give him his coffee with lots of sugar every morning and some breakfast. And he always will start sweeping and doing stuff before he even eats. He makes sure it's done, so he's a great guy. And we've never asked him to do it, but he just volunteers to. But it's nice to know there's people like that in the world. They'll just volunteer their time like that.
Good home?
Did you sleep okay?
Yes, I slept pretty good.
Good. Yep, I'm headed home. I'm gonna go chill for a little bit and then take my dog to the park. Because I just had to get a puppy.
Okay.
All right, you guys have a good day.
So last night, we had a Puente employee who had a medical emergency. And this lady, who is one of our guests, was just really quick to recognize that. And she went and got her phone and she called 911, and she made sure that the gal was okay. She was having a seizure. She opened the door for law enforcement to come in. She went back, she helped her up and helped her into the office and sat her down and stayed with her until law enforcement, and then eventually the ambulance arrived. And so we just thought it would be really fun to recognize the fact that she was heroic last night, and we're going to present her with this little La Puente Hero Award.
Hi, Noreen. Hi, Noreen.
Noreen, on behalf of the Puente family, we want to give you this little certificate. It's a recognition of a Puente hero, and it says presented to Noreen Pearson for her quick action, kindness, and compassion during a Puente employee medical emergency. You're a hero in our books. You're welcome. Thank you, Noreen. It's really
Life is about waiting. But you wait to be born, you wait to die. You wait for everything that comes along. And if you're patient, you get rewarded. I remember asking God, I said, I have 10 minutes today, God. You think you could send me some patience? Because I don't have any. He's working on it. He's really working on it.
Yeah,
What's your name?
the chorus is Sandy's name. Chorus is the name.
Your name's Sakina.
Sakina?
Yes.
My name's Samantha, and I've been here for a week, and things are going okay. It's a calm place to be
Yeah.
at.
And you're the only one with kids here, it seems like. How's that experience been?
A little bit tough. Just trying to keep them comfortable and going back and forth everywhere with them.
And do y'all have plans for after you leave the shelter?
Yes.
What is your plan, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
Getting back to my home. Making sure it's safe. Yes.
I ran away from home because my son's girlfriend was beating me up and mentally abusing me, and she wouldn't get me my medication. And at that time, I thought I had high blood pressure and all that. And I went from December to July 27th without any medication. I had to do something. So when they were sleeping, I ran away. Get out here.
I got discharged December 11th. I went home for Christmas and New Year's. New Year's, I smoked a joint with my brother. January 5th, I re-enlisted, and the first thing they did was give me a piss test. And then I spent 2 years fighting it. And I still lost. I didn't get kicked out of the Navy. I opted out because I was in E5. And at 10 years, you have to be in E5 to re-enlist. And they took 2 stripes, so I was in E3 again. The Navy was probably the best 10 years of my life so far, you know? And I screwed it up with one wrong decision, you know? But anyways, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of good friends, you know?
I hope and dream that someday my children's books will be published and that I will change lives by sharing the great things that happened to me in my childhood. And I want to transfer that into a story with a happy ending. That's my trademark. I don't let my characters die. I don't let bad people win. My stories always have a happy ending, and I wish life was more like that. Because children need to experience things they may not always get a chance to do. Children are our most precious asset. We can't let them just slip away.
So at 12 p.m., we serve everyone who is a guest here at the shelter. And then at 12:30, out the back gate, we serve anybody who's outside and looking for a to-go meal. Here you go. You got it? Here you go. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Can I get two if possible?
Are you giving it to someone else?
Yeah, Paul, I don't know if he's made it back to his tent yet, but that's where I'm going.
My last meal, I want to make sure. Perfect. Wow, that worked out way too well.
When someone walks through our door, we kind of do an assessment with them. Basically, we're going to look at where are they right now? Do they have clothing? Do they have, shoes on their feet? Do they have those basic necessities? Next thing we're going to look at is their health. Are they healthy physically? Are they healthy mentally? If they're not healthy, then we are going to make the referrals and try to get them into the appropriate programs so that they can better their health. Then we kind of look at their income situation. Do they have an income? Do they not have an income? What do they need to get an income? We can refer to different places. We work with the Job Service Center. Our outreach program has an employment navigator, and we want to get kind of that income source either flowing or established or verified for them. Sometimes people come to us and they have other issues like they've lost identification, birth certificates, driver's license, ID cards, social security cards. We work with them and the other agencies in order to kind of get those documents back in place so that they can either seek employment or do those applications for housing. Once that income is established and we know they have all the paperwork, then we help them to look for housing. And then ultimately, we will transition them into a stable housing and look to our other resources to see that they have what they need in that house. Do they need a bed? Do they need a mattress? Do they need some sheets? Do they need hygiene items? Those types of things.
All right, Eric, I am ready to go.
My name is Graham Hunt, and I'm housing navigator here at La Puente shelter. So my role is basically working with clients in and outside of the shelter, looking for housing resources, basically identifying what are the barriers to this individual being stably housed and trying to connect them with the resources to navigate those barriers. Having fallen in certain instances on hard times myself in my own past, I was very fortunately able to rely on a strong network of friends and family and neighbors who looked out for me and were able to help me navigate those hard times until I was, kind of back on my feet, so to speak. And so now today, to be able to be that friend and that neighbor to other folks in that kind of a situation is what, and to do so in my home community of the San Luis Valley means a great deal to me.
Fire truck goes by and Dalmatian is hanging out the window. First boy says, you know what that Dalmatian does? He runs into the burning house and finds the children hiding under the bed and drags them out and saves them. Second boy says, no he doesn't. He's mean and vicious and he stands out front. When the people get too close to the fire, he scares them away so the firemen can do their job. Third boy says, no, you both got it wrong. He says, well, why did they bring the Dalmatian? He said, he's the only one that knows where the fire hydrants are.
So this one has a lot more in it than that.
We serve as a homeless shelter, obviously, but we're a little bit more than that. We're sometimes people's dining room and living room, and we strive to provide a place where people feel comfortable when they're probably in one of the worst crises of their life, so that they can kind of regroup and get themselves back out there and do what they want to do in life.
Barbecue sauce? Do you need barbecue sauce? Do you want barbecue sauce? Do you want barbecue sauce? Do you want barbecue sauce?
I've stayed here before in the past, and these people here, the staff members, everyone is amazing, and they do everything they can for people that are less fortunate. Thank you, boss man.
You're not going to find another shelter like this. This is one of the best shelters in the country, probably. The staff here is always nice. As long as you treat everybody here with respect, you'll get treated with respect.
John stuff. John stuff.
Great.
You got the Black Lives Matter?
Got it. Looking great.
I'll check that same stuff.
You got it.
They are polite. Thank you guys, you are sweet. You didn't have to give them nothing. They really do have dog food.
Hey.
Thank you.
John, are you here, man? No, and neither are Dino and Des? Okay, I'll put that there to him. Hey! Hey, we came to bring you dinner, if that's okay. Ambrose! Ambrose!
Thank you.
Of course.
Ambrose.
Ambrose is like, is that for me?
Yeah, exactly.
He's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a good boy.
He's gonna follow you now.
I'm glad it's still pretty warm out.
Yeah, I know. Good.
Bye, all.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It smells excellent.
Enjoy it, okay?
Me too.
We'll see you. I'll let you know, man. Hey, we gotta go. It's getting late, too.
Thank you for dinner.
You're welcome. Enjoy, bud.
It's much appreciated.
This guy right here, he organized the dinner.
Thank you for dinner, man.
Of course.
See ya.
See you guys. Be careful. You guys have a good night.
Yeah, be safe, Brian.
Yeah, try to.
No, if it wasn't hers,
I don't think God lets anything happen in our life without a reason. And I think he makes us strong because there's a challenge coming up. And he knows that we can't do the challenge unless we're strong enough to go through it. And I think that's what this entire thing has been about. I think I had gotten weak and settled in my ways, and he had to shake me up. God knows he did. And he had to show me that I had strength in myself that I didn't know I had. And I never would have found it if it hadn't been for the people here, because they believed in me. When I couldn't believe in myself, they believed in me. And when I reached out, there was love there, and I needed that more than anything. Because I think love heals too, just like laughter. If you got love in your life, you're better off than most.
Yay, next stop.
You're so neat. Well, I hope you feel better. All right, you guys have a good night. Well, if I come up in the morning, I'll know where you're at. Okay. You're not here, okay? All right, night, hon. Sweet dreams.
I don't drink, but thank you.
I want to go dancing.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that just as much as we did. It was a fantastic video that really does go to show the heart of what our shelter does. At the end of the day, what we do here at La Puente is figuring out how we really help people. Um, and when we start to think about La Puente and the work that we do, we really do need to recognize that the reason La Puente exists as an organization is because we exist in an area of extreme cold. Often placed, Alamosa is the coldest place in the continental United States. These were some digits from this past winter. And if you're sleeping outside at negative 30 degrees, your life is in jeopardy. And that is the life and death stakes that started our shelter. This year, during Hope Week, we were thankful enough to honor one of our co-founders, Sister Angelo, who helped start the organization. And it is her values and compassion that continue to light the way of what we do. So tonight, we really hope that you all learned a little bit about what the day-to-day looks like at the shelter. That was a day where we were able to provide a wonderful barbecue to our community. Teddy showed you from night until day what that organization looks like and what happens in those day-to-day interactions. And the heart of it is the people that we serve. So we're so thankful to have that, and we're so thankful to have that connection with those that we serve, because we understand that the biggest thing, as Noreen said, is love. And that we come to people when they are in desperate circumstances, when they're struggling to survive, and we remind them that there is hope. We remind them that there are people that care about them and that want to help them move forward. So that really is the heart of our shelter. And we're going to talk a little bit now about really what does the shelter do. So the shelter was started in 1982. It is one of the oldest rural homeless shelters in the country. We can't necessarily we're the oldest, but I'm pretty confident that if we had to stake the claim that we pretty could. But we like to say that we are one of the oldest homeless shelters in the country. And that really does have the root that rural homelessness looks really different than in larger cities. And so we as a community, with the support of folks like Sister Mary Angelo and other community members, have figured out what our response to homelessness looks like. The shelter was the start of that response, and it is here now nearly 40 years later, still providing support to folks that need it. So we are a provisional and transitional place to stay, food to eat and support, and a new hope for those experiencing homelessness. One of the things that you definitely saw within that video is that La Puente is a home. We really believe that we are family and that together we can support each other through this process and lift one another up. So we really are about helping folks figure out how they navigate that road to stability and out of homelessness. One of the more important things to remember about our shelter is that it is a drug and weapon-free environment. We absolutely do not tolerate any of those things within our campus. If we see them, we report them. We are active responders with law enforcement, ensuring that we want to make sure that our location and our facility is drug and weapons free. We understand that oftentimes that spills out into the community, and as we walk through tonight, we'll talk about some of those unique things that happen with the homeless that really do require extra considerations and that we understand are a part of the work, but we definitely do our best within our campus to ensure that we are a drug and weapons free environment. One of the other unique things about our shelter is that we are a shelter that serves men, women, and families all within one single shelter. Oftentimes in larger cities, each of those types of shelters are divided up into different places. Here, we have figured out a way that we can do that all together, and really does serve to ensure that family feels a part. As you saw in our video tonight, there are family members with children currently staying at our shelter, and that is not an uncommon thing. And that is part of why we really do insist so heavily on our drug and weapons-free environment, to ensure that we do have a safe place for families to restore themselves and to walk on their new path. Another thing about the shelter is that we do have a 30-day length of stay. It is a transitional place. We really do understand that we want and encourage people to move on from where we're at. That regardless of what has happened in your life, that there is a path forward, and with getting a job, getting housing, there is a path and a way that we can resolve some of these crises. So that 30-day stay really does encourage folks to develop a plan quickly. And then with the process of, with the coordination to our other La Puente services, other community services like food stamps and Medicaid, behavioral health, all those different things, we really do try to figure out what does an individual need when they check into the shelter. What are those most important things that we can work on them with to help them get to that new place. So it is a constant daily process of encouraging folks to seek out those opportunities, to find employment, to find housing, but also to help them break down those barriers that we do know exist with all of those things. For any of us that have ever had to suffer homelessness, lifting yourself out of that dark space is one of the hardest things you will ever do in your life. So ensuring that we can provide folks with those different opportunities to make that happen is a huge part of what we're wanting to do as an organization. Some of the other things that we really do focus on also is that we recognize that there are folks struggling in our community that are not necessarily willing to access our services by staying at the shelter. They can't commit to being abstinent or drug-free or alcohol-free. So we really do want to ensure that we can still offer things like hygiene kits, showers, blankets, access to phones and copies that really do ensure that people can have what they need to survive. One of the other cool parts about our shelter is that we also have a safe house partnership with TUCASA and domestic violence. So for those that are fleeing from domestic violence situations, they always have a safe place to exist at our shelter. One of the other main features of our emergency shelter is our La Puente community meal. So La Puente serves 3 daily meals, 365 days a year. And that is an important part of what we do here for our community. We understand that just those that are homeless are not the only ones that struggle with hunger. The reality is that many of the folks that attend our daily meals are folks here in our community. They are folks that are low income, that struggle to find ways to feed themselves. But there are also folks in our community that are just seeking out some connection. They're wanting folks to figure out a place that they can go, a place that they can be, to be with others. And so that's a huge part of our community meal. Now during COVID, we have been forced to restrict access to our shelter. So we really have been figuring out new and unique ways to partner with folks. And so since the beginning of COVID, we've been able to distribute over 3,000 to-go meals here in our community. We've also been able to partner with local restaurants to purchase hot, ready-to-go meals. So folks can get a wonderful meal from one of our local businesses, and we're also able to impact our local economy. La Puente really is all about figuring out how we support one another. We really do believe that we are stronger together. So you will see that reiterated across our programs and across the work that we do. But our community meal is a huge part of the way that we ensure that no one goes hungry here in our community. So as we start to talk about who our shelter guests were, we saw a lot of the heart of who those folks are, right? They are grandmas, they are brothers, they are sisters, they are our neighbors. They fall in hard times for a lot of different reasons. And I'm going to share a little bit now about who those folks are. So in 2019, we served about 510 guests. And that is actually a really low number for us. When we first began our outreach with La Puente, we averaged about 1,000 to 1,100 intakes every year. Through the rest of the services we've developed, we figure out how we can prevent homelessness in a lot of ways. So we've seen that number reduced. And last year was an all-time low for us. Of course, with COVID, that number has even been decreased even more. But at the end of the day, even with our 30-day night encouraged stay, the average stay of length is actually only 15 and a half nights. Folks are encouraged to figure out what their new options are, how to get to that next place, and how to lift themselves up. One of the things that we often encounter as a misconception here in our community is that we are serving folks from somewhere else, that our shelter guests are imported from another place. But the reality is that 83% of those that we serve were our residents of the San Luis Valley. When we ask folks where were your last permanent resident or where was the last place that you called home, it's right here in our local community. The vast majority of those folks are actually coming here from Alamosa County. When we start to break those numbers down by county, you see those slivers of Mineral and Saguache and Rio Grande and Conejos de Costilla. But at the end of the day, those that we are serving here at La Puente are our neighbors. They are our community. The folks know us. So they're not strangers to us. But the reality is that is one of those misconceptions that we have here about our organizations, that we are bringing folks from somewhere else. But the truth is that they're right here. They're folks that struggle with what we're doing. And the truth is also that our homelessness rate here in the San Luis Valley is actually 10 times the national rate. Rural homelessness often looks very different from urban settings, as we discussed earlier. Oftentimes it looks like folks camping down by the river or in secluded areas where they can't be found. There are also folks occupying homes within our community. There are also folks that live out in underdeveloped areas that don't have access to running water, electricity, and some of those modern amenities which we consider essential to living. So all of those pieces come into fact when we're really talking about who we serve. And as we start to break some of these numbers down from that smaller percentage of that 72% of who don't come from the Valley, we do want to start to share about a little bit about where they do come from. So again, about 9% come from out of state. About 8% of those come from other areas outside of the San Luis Valley. When we start looking at where folks really do come from us, it's our neighboring states. Texas and New Mexico are the highest number of folks that really come into our community. And oftentimes we see that the reason that they're coming to our community is that they have friends and family already here. There is a connection. There is a reason why they're coming into our community. When we start to look at folks within Colorado, El Paso County and Pueblo are the two largest folks that we see increase of folks from. And when we start to ask folks about why they're coming to the San Luis Valley, when there's a million other places to be, right? And we really do start to see that that main reason is that they have family and friends here. About 20% are figuring out how to relocate here, and in that relocation, their plans become disrupted. And so they're trying to figure out a path forward. About 17% are getting stranded as they pass through here. The San Luis Valley is a huge geographic area, and if your car breaks down here in Alamosa, you know that you're not getting over any single one of these passes, and you're going to be stuck here until you can get your car fixed. So oftentimes that is why folks land up here. We also have a huge percentage of seasonal and migrant workers that continue to call La Puente their home and are part of what really does make our community unique. And we're happy that they can find La Puente as a resource to ensure that they can find a stable place to live while they work here in our community. Another huge percentage is folks that are searching for affordable land and housing. The San Luis Valley is full of land that is really cheap to buy. And we have seen a huge influx of community members into the land near the Sangre de Cristos that is underdeveloped. There is no electricity, no running water, but the land is cheap. So you can buy a plot of land for $5,000 and you move out here, and then you recognize that the life to build your homestead is a lot harder than you thought it was. So we definitely have a lot of folks that find themselves in those same situations. Domestic violence is a huge piece, folks that are stuck here from court and pending, things like that. And then the last small percentages that we really see is that folks have heard of our services from outside of the San Luis Valley. They make about 0.6, and when we talk about the 619 folks that we've served over 2019, 2020, we're literally talking about 2 individuals there. And then the folks that came for marijuana, literally 1 individual answered that question that way. So those 2 are often some of those things that we hear at La Puente about why folks come here, because La Puente is so good at what we do and we advertise across the country. That is completely false. We do not advertise our services anywhere outside of the San Luis Valley. And the reason that folks land up here at La Puente is because they're already members of our community and know that La Puente is a resource for them here. So as we start to think about La Puente in its larger iterations, something I really want to help folks understand is that our shelter guests actually only make up about 5.88% of those that we serve here at La Puente. Annually, we serve over 10,000 folks, and only about 500 of those are from our shelter. So it is a relatively small proportion of the really great work that we are doing, which is a response to the endemic poverty that exists within our community. So some of the other services that we offer here in our community are really a family of programs. Adelante, Food Bank, Crisis Prevention Resources, Veggie, Shelter, Rural Outreach are all some of the programs that we have here within our community that focus on homelessness and seek to help build people up. One of the main programs that we have developed over the last year is our street outreach program. Our street outreach program is designed to work with folks that are not actively seeking services or do not want to be checked into the shelter, but nonetheless are still living unsheltered here in our community. We are firm believers at La Puente that because you are alive, you are worthy. You deserve our help, you deserve food, you deserve safety, and you deserve our concern. So that was what outreach is really all about, providing those basic necessities, tents, sleeping bags, and those other things that folks really need to survive outside in this cold. As we get into these colder months, we are continuing to figure out about warming shelters and other ways that we can support our unsheltered neighbors, but it is an extreme part of what we do here at La Puente. One of the other programs that I talked about a little bit earlier was our rural outreach program, and that is that program that works with those families that live out near the Sangre de Cristos. They are communities that really do struggle with basic necessities. So we ensure that we are La Puente in a truck, ensuring that they get all those things that they need. Oftentimes food, firewood, propane, and trash services are some of the most important things that we can offer to those communities. But it is one of those things that is unique about rural homelessness that we want to ensure that we can offer an option for. Our most utilized program here at La Puente is actually our food bank network of the San Luis Valley. We recognize that with poverty, oftentimes folks are forced to decide between feeding themselves and paying bills. That is a decision that we never want someone to have to go through. So we have developed 15 food pantries scattered across the San Luis Valley that provide good, nutritious food to our communities to ensure that they don't have to go hungry. One of the great things that we do for our unsheltered neighbors is that we ensure that we can provide food boxes to them that do not require a kitchen, that you can eat cold or eat ready to ensure that they can have access to food in the circumstances that they're currently living. One of our other main programs that really does focus on helping folks transfer out of homelessness is our Adelante Family Resource Center. Our Adelante program owns 27 units, which are part of our supportive housing program. And we actually just had an unsheltered gentleman who had been living outside for about 2.5 years that just transferred into that program. So it is one of those ways that we continually try to bring folks off the streets into good housing. And the great part about our supportive housing program is that it is coupled with intensive case management to ensure that folks can not only move into housing, but they can maintain their housing. One of the other main ways that we really do prevent homelessness here in the San Luis Valley is through our crisis prevention resources. When folks are living on the brink, it only takes one catastrophe or one struggle to push them into homelessness. Our crisis prevention resources are focused on figuring out how folks never become homeless in the first place. As I spoke about a little earlier, is that about 1,100 intakes were our average when we first opened up the shelter. After we opened up crisis prevention resources, those numbers have fallen by at least half. As I said earlier, we about had 510 people that enrolled in our shelter last year. One of the key ways that we keep folks out of our shelter is by keeping them in their homes and ensuring that we provide them with assistance for rent, utility, or whatever the crisis is that is going to make them unstable in the first place. One of the last services that we really do offer is to our homeless community is our Rethreads Resource Center. We understand that folks still need things. You need clothing, you need shampoo, you need deodorant. So Rethreads is one of our free community sources here in our community where we give out things for free. So if folks are homeless and they're needing some of those things, Tracy is our Rethreads manager and is wonderful about ensuring that she connects folks to the resources that they need to survive. As we start to look at La Puente as a larger organization, these are some of the wonderful statistics that we can offer about how we serve our community in such dramatic ways. As I said earlier, oftentimes folks only assume that the shelter is the only thing La Puente does, but the reality is that is only about 6% of the services that we offer here in our community. Crisis prevention resources assist 1,300 households every year. Food Bank, our largest program, assists over 10,000 folks. Our Adelante Family Resource Center helped over 335 households last year, and those numbers can go on and on. At the end of the day, La Puente is about ensuring that we can help folks meet their immediate needs and empower them to live with dignity in the long run. Some of the other great things that we have done here at La Puente is that we have continued to figure out how we respond even in the time of COVID. We have adapted almost every single one of our services to ensure that we can still meet the need. So if folks are still needing access to services, please visit our website, lapuentehome.org/COVID services to see what our current services are and how folks can gain access to those resources. So now we are going to actually begin the portion of our Q&A. So we had folks that had signed up for our registration and had submitted some of their questions. So we're going to get a chance to answer those now. So one of the first questions was, how can we as donors think outside the box to donate goods or supplies? What is truly helpful? The truth of that is everything is helpful. Oftentimes, like we said, we are meeting those basic necessities of food, clothing, and hygiene. So hygiene kits with shampoo, toiletries, combs, toothbrushes, all of those things that you and I use every day to prepare ourselves to go out into the world are the same exact things that our unsheltered neighbors need. So hygiene kits are always in demand. Also, our food budget is essentially a $0 food budget. We depend on our community members to provide us with the food that we need to feed over 40,000 meals every single year. So oftentimes when our AmeriCorps members come in to cook each day, it is a version of Chopped in that pantry, figuring out what the secret ingredient is for the day. But nonetheless, we still provide those 40,000 meals every single year. So that is one of those ways that folks can really, truly help. Our second question is, how is it going with COVID precautions? The biggest obstacle that we have seen is that we have been limited in our capacity to have guests at our shelter. We have a 45-bed facility, and the public health has asked us to decrease that by a third. So right now we have 15 guests at our shelter, and we are prioritizing those that we feel like can make a successful transition into stable housing. So as we are processing guests, we really are focusing right now on those that can really make that transition easily and quickly, so we can help them and prioritize those resources. And again, we have other resources for those folks that are not accessing services or do not able to enter into the shelter. What food item do you need the most of but always don't have at mealtime? The number one answer I actually had was spices. Salt and pepper are two simple things that we typically think of, right? But all of those extra fancy spices that I don't even know about, but garlic, cumin, Italian seasoning, oregano, all those wonderful things that we always throw into our food. We always need those large family bulk sizes of those spices. So if folks are ever coming across those are something that we're always needing. Cooking oil is always something. Fresh cream, butter, and milk. So those dairy type of products are something that also the shelter is always looking for. Ground pork and beef, as well as breakfast meats, are also something that the shelter is always looking for. And then the final thing that they let me know about was farm fresh eggs. We know that we have folks that have chickens around these parts, and we know that the more that we can get that good, organic, fresh produce and fresh things to our clients, the healthier they can be. One of our questions is, what do the clients do while at the shelter? We talked a little bit earlier, and you saw some of the day-to-day activities that they take on, whether that's chores and helping out at the shelter. Every client is assigned a chore to help out and ensure that they are pulling their fair weight, and providing community to ensure that with one another. Also during the day, once we ask folks to wake up in the morning, we actually close most of our bedrooms down to encourage folks to be out in our community. If folks are elderly or disabled or have some medical conditions, we make exceptions for that. But we really do encourage folks to be outside of their bedrooms, active in their community, seeking out employment and housing options every single day. It is a job, and we encourage them to take that on in full force. And then also some of the other things that folks really do figure out is just how they support one another. One of the things that I really do love about the shelter is that regardless of the circumstance that folks find themselves in, they are still willing to offer whatever little bit they have to help one another out. One of our next questions is, what's working well at the shelter? One of the things that we've been really able to improve over these past couple months is our case management. We have been able to bring in an employment navigator and then housing navigator, two of the biggest issues that we often find for those that are struggling with homelessness and trying to get back on their feet are those two types of issues. So we have figured out two case managers that specialize in those, have partnerships around the San Luis Valley, know how to problem solve, know the ins and outs of those types of systems. So our case manager has been one of those things that we have seen being really effective. With our employment navigation, for example, over 64% of those that enrolled in that program with us were able to increase their employment opportunities and find stable employment. So that's one of those things that is really working well for us. One of the things that we could really use at our organization is access to affordable housing. It's not necessarily something that folks can provide to us here in the community or donate. Maybe they could. Homes are always wonderful, and we do have 27 properties that we use. Those do come at a reduced rate to every single one of our clients. But one of those things is landlords here in our community that are willing to rent to folks that may not have a perfect rental history, may not have a perfect criminal history, but are willing to partner with folks that are looking to build their lives up. We are always looking for folks to partner with that. And then also, we recognize that oftentimes there are things that grants do not fund. So our employment and housing navigations will cover things like work boots and work clothes or housing application fees, but they won't cover a bus ticket to get you back to your family and the support system that you have outside of state. Or they will not help you repair your car to get back into stable employment. So crisis funds like that are always something that we're looking to do and be able to offer to our clients to ensure that we can meet those unique circumstances that they do have. One of the most needed items the folks were asking for what we have at the shelter, and especially this time of year, it is men's hats and gloves and other cold gear. Oftentimes we get lovely things that are hand knit or beautiful scarves, but oftentimes what we need is that cold weather gear. So those things that last outside in -degree temperatures, good work gloves are some of those things that we're constantly needing, and specifically men's clothing are something that we're always in special need of. One of the second questions that again asked about how has COVID affected the shelter. Again, we talked about having that limited capacity in the shelter guests that we have. One of the other biggest things that has been a drawback for us as an organization is we don't get to have the open doors which we are accustomed to. We have to ask extra questions, a locked door, knock on a window, those types of things. And that has really been hard for us. One of the other things that a shelter staff member mentioned to me is that we're huggers. And we haven't been able to give those good hugs lately. And so things like that are some of those things that we've had to figure out how we make precautions around and how we increase our cleaning and sanitation. But they are things that we're continuing to figure out. One of those last questions that we had is what is expected to be there and how do we encourage families to be independent? As we talked about, that case management, employment, and housing navigation are crucial to that. We do encourage folks to be outside of the shelter every single day, doing what they need to do to figure out those next steps for themselves. It is always a process, and at the end of the day, something that we really do recognize as the Puente is that oftentimes when folks come to us in their homeless situation is the lowest point that they've ever been at in their life. So part of what we want to do is build them back up and be a safe space and be a respite when they need it most. So those were some of the questions that were submitted via our chat features. And right now we have one question that was submitted from Jeff and Hallie Owsley is, when you have families with kids staying at the shelter, can you explain a little bit about what those service needs look like? So one of the great things that we are able to do with those clients is that we do have family rooms. So as I talked about earlier, is we are a unique facility that we serve men, women, and families all in one place. We have a men's dormitory and a women's dormitory upstairs, but on our bottom level, we have a whole series of family rooms where families are able to stick together and be able to weather this crisis and not have the extra trauma of having to be split up. Some of the other unique things that we really do offer with our children that enroll in our program is anytime a child enrolls in the shelter, they are always a priority list for our PALS Children's Program, which really does focus on how do we meet those unique needs that arise for children. When families experience crisis, it is not just the parents that experience it, it's those children. And we want to ensure that we are providing them a safe space with creativity and learning and social emotional engagement that helps them to develop resistancy and resiliency to ensure that they don't have to relive the same struggles that their own parents go through. Some of the other unique things that we're able to do with those families is match them with some of those other 2 generational models that we have here at La Puente that do focus on not only what do the parents need, but also what do those children need. The other great part that I've really also noticed at the shelter is that whenever there is a family checked in, there are 1,000,001 folks that want to step up as a babysitter. So if someone just needs to be watched for a couple of minutes or while mom runs to do whatever she needs to do, there are folks that are always willing to step up and do those types of things. So it is really, really wonderful. One of our next questions was from Susan McConnell. You talked about foods that don't require a kitchen. What are some of those examples? So some of those things that we talk about are pop top things. So oftentimes when folks are unsheltered, they don't have a can opener. So if you can pop it open, those are one of those things. One of the things that we also really recognize with our unsheltered folks is proteins. So mini weenies, tuna, baked beans, those types of things are all really good sources of protein and don't necessarily need to be heated up. It's nice when they are heated up, but you can't eat them cold if you need to. So some of those things are some of those types of items that we need. Also, water is also a necessity. And then especially for those folks that are living outside, we're continually in need of tents, sleeping bags, and other warm gear that can keep them warm. And especially as our temperatures start to dip into the negative and freezing degrees, those are so, so necessary. Our next question was, how many bedrooms does the shelter have? It is 45 beds that we have, and a number of those rooms are multiple beds in one room. So I know specifically one of the men's dormitories has 6 different beds inside of there. But I also mentioned that we have family rooms where folks can just be their families, where we have bunk beds and different things set up for folks to participate that way. One of our last questions was submitted earlier, and it was, what is the best way of dealing with people who are negative about the shelter's effect on our neighborhood? This is one of the things that we struggle the most with at La Puente. We recognize that those that we serve come with a lot of issues. Oftentimes when we're talking to about folks that are not able to enroll at the shelter because they cannot abide by our drug-free and weapons-free environment, is because they have an addiction. And when folks are suffering with addiction, they have a whole other series of problems that come with that. We as an organization do our absolute best to figure out how we be good partners in that, right? We are members of our neighborhood watch. There is no one on the south side of town that actually interacts with dispatch more than La Puente. We are active parts about figuring out how we provide a law enforcement and a public safety aspect to this, but we also recognize that we cannot contain the issues within La Puente's campus. Folks exist outside in our community and they are struggling. And what we really encourage folks is to be part of our solution. The truth is that we cannot demonize people away. We are not going to shame them to disappear. They are a human being. I mean, the more that we can respond with a sense of connection that reminds people that they have a place in this community, I think the more that we can really start to reframe this issue. At the end of the day, like I said, we cannot make people disappear. But we as a community can band together to figure out how we provide more options, how we look out for one another. If you see something, say something. As I said earlier, La Puente is one of the most active responders with law enforcement. Whenever there is an issue with either drug dealing or drug issues here on campus, we are an active part of law enforcement's efforts to ensure that we get those types of folks off the street and into treatment that they need to make their lives better. So as we participate this, the other thing that we really want to recognize is that La Puente cannot solve homelessness on its own. Homelessness is a community-wide issue. Alamosa City has put together its own homelessness coalition. And if folks are interested in being part of that coalition, there are active seats on that board. Our spaces do arrive. You have the opportunity to attend those meetings. That is one of those unique ways that folks can continue to be involved. But at the end of the day, the best way to be part of what we're doing is to be part of our solution. We cannot wish these problems away, but La Puente is how our community has responded to the issues that exist within our community. I think those are all the questions that we have had submitted for the night. I'm gonna check one more time our screen share. I just want to thank everybody that has stuck around for this entire evening. Like I said, this is a unique opportunity for us, so we really do appreciate it. And again, shout out to Teddy and this amazing video that he put together. We'll make sure to share that in our social media feeds later on. But we thank you for being part of our solution to homelessness and poverty here in our community. La Puente, as I said, began in 1982 as a life and death response to the homelessness that exists in our community, and that's what we're still doing to this day. So again, thank you for being part of what we're doing. And if you do have questions, please feel to reach out. My email is community.edu@lapuente.net. And I live to ensure that folks can have their questions answered and be part of what we're doing here. This is how we solve the problems. This is how we make a way forward, and it's together. So thank you for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. It's been wonderful, and we look to seeing you out here in the future.